It's 2002, and Ava, a 14-year-old girl from Bridgeport, Connecticut, is woken up by a loud sound in the middle of the night. She recalls a time when her father told her that he would not always be there to protect her, and so she would have to rely on herself. Truly, these words come into play that night as she exits her room slowly to investigate the noise. Unfortunately for her, she finds her father, who happens to be a drug lord, murdered by two masked intruders. But instead of getting scared and giving the typical reaction we'd all expect, she grabs the shotgun and guns down both assailants. Fast forward to 12 years later, Ava had just recovered from a drug and alcohol addiction and is about to get married to rich Derek Grant in Arlington. Apparently, these two lovebirds met while attending a Narcotics Anonymous gathering. Derek's father doesn't seem too pleased with the relationship, but who can stop two youngsters in love? Exactly, no one. Anyways, after the wedding, the couple decides to fly off to a Caribbean island for their honeymoon. Derek's parents happen to also own a summer house there, so they've got it covered with the accommodation. Things start out great at first, and the couple seems to already love it on the island. One evening, Ava and Derek are chatting their time away over a drink when Derek leaves and tells Ava not to go anywhere. While he's off, a young local named Manny approaches Ava and starts a conversation with her. Derek soon joins them, and they realize that Manny is a cool guy. Manny then invites them to a nightclub where they can make the most of their night. Unfortunately, while dancing, a popularly known gangster, Big Biz, tries to have Ava for himself, and when Derek intervenes, Big Biz throws a punch at Derek. Well, that was unexpected. But what's even more unexpected is Ava's retaliation. She basically goes on a rampage and takes everyone who lunges at her down. She even almost flips Derek over, but calms down when she hears his voice. Manny helps them escape the club and get into a cab waiting outside. Manny is in awe at how cool Ava is, but Derek is worried about her and tries to calm her down. Back in the club, Big Biz is cautioned by Lugo, the leader of whatever gang this is. The next day, Derek and Ava wake up to the continuous banging at their door and come out to see that it's Manny. Manny tells them that Big Biz has sent some men over to get back at them for what happened, putting the couple in a small state of panic as they realize they don't even have anywhere to run to or to hide. Just then, Manny laughs and tells them that he was joking and only wanted to get them up and ready to ride. El Viudador, which is Spanish for the Widowmaker. It's basically a zipline course in the rainforest. All three of them go down the short line at first, but when it comes to the line that runs for at least 1 mile, Ava, who's scared of heights, declines. So that leaves Manny and Derek, who are crazy excited to get on with the idea. Manny goes first, and Derek goes next. But sadly, Derek's harness snaps while descending, forcing him to hold on to the line with his arms and legs. Ava sees this and gets really uncomfortable. But on seeing Manny, who's returning trying to help him out, she's a bit hopeful. But Derek slips and falls to the ground anyway. Ava rushes into the forest to find him with a badly broken leg. He is also unconscious, but thankfully, he is still alive. Meanwhile, an ambulance had been called, and they were right on time to take Derek. However, Ava isn't allowed to ride in the ambulance with her husband. She tries to fight her way in, but they give her some sort of silly excuse about an insurance policy. Instead, she asks for the name of the hospital and is given a card. She then borrows a bike and chases after the ambulance. On her way there, she bumps into an oncoming vehicle and falls off the bike. This causes her to lose sight of the ambulance, but thank goodness she has that card with the hospital's name on it. She quickly grabs a lift and heads to the hospital. On reaching the hospital, she is told that her husband wasn't brought into the hospital. She panics, takes out a picture of Derek to show the nurse, and asks her to check the emergency records. Something was starting to smell fishy. So Ava assumes that, maybe she got the wrong address and decides to check another hospital that was close by. She ends up checking all the local island hospitals, recalling how harsh her life was growing up with her father, who only taught her how to retaliate and live her life as the daughter of a drug lord. Coming back to her senses, Ava realizes that none of them had admitted her husband. Derek must have been kidnapped, but how? She immediately goes to the police to report her husband missing and is asked to fill out a form first. The next day, Derek's family arrives at the island and joins Ava on her way to the police station. There, Ava is asked a couple of questions that can help them find Derek, and this only leads to the zip line they were at that evening. Officer Garza then takes them to the place to question the staff, but they meet the owner instead. Shockingly, the owner denies that they were open the day Derek fell. He also denies not knowing anything about them. But Ava remembers the staff guy and points him out to the officer. The staff guy also denies it, and it's obvious he's trying to escape from Ava, but she grabs him by the clothes and tries to get him to tell the truth. Sadly, the owner asks that she be taken away from the place as she's scaring the customers and creating a scene. Ava is then cautioned by Garza and taken back to the station, where she gets confronted by Garza about a video clip from the club a few nights ago. Ava explains to him that she was only protecting herself. Later, the duo is offered drinks, and Garza asks how Ava's relationship is with her husband. She tells him they're good, but Garza drops a bomb, saying he found out that she's the main beneficiary of all his assets. Well, duh, Ava's his wife, so who else would Derek have made his main beneficiary? Garza. Anyway, things seem to be getting nowhere, so Ava decides to find her husband by herself. With help from Derek's parents, she puts up a missing person poster of Derek around some places, and they go around asking people if they might have seen him. One night, while they're at it, she sees a car pass by with someone who looks like Derek in it and starts to chase after the vehicle. When she gets the car to stop, she realizes she was mistaken and quickly apologizes to the men. Later that night, it is revealed that Ava hasn't eaten anything in 2 days. She asks her father-in-law if anyone has called regarding Derek, but she gets a rather insulting reply. He says some mean things to her and narrows it down to her just being after the assets in the first place. But Ava wasn't just going to stand and take all that. She starts by telling him that she loves his son, then tells him off before storming out. The next day, Derek's family packs their things and leaves, seeming to have given up and accepted that Ava might have taken their son's life. Well, except Derek's sister, who seems to care a lot about Ava. After they leave, Ava heads back to the zip line to interrogate the staff. He tries to escape again, so she takes a more dangerous approach and starts to question him, threatening to throw him down the same way Derek fell. He confesses, and Ava gets it all on tape and heads straight to the police station. Unfortunately, she didn't get the reaction she was expecting. Officer Garza tells her that while she can threaten people in America to get information out of them, she's not allowed to do that here. So he orders one of the officers to send Ava away from the island on a ferry. While on the ferry, Ava asks to use the bathroom, but the officer says he's supposed to keep an eye on her at all times. He escorts her to the women's restroom, where she attacks him and steals his keys to free herself. She returns to the main deck and jumps off the ferry, then swims back to the island to continue looking for her husband. Gotta love her guts. Anyways, she takes a quick shower and steals a change of clothes before heading out to find Manny, whom she threatens to get information on Derek's whereabouts. She shows him a logo and asks to know what it's about, and Manny explains to her everything he knows, except he really doesn't know what happened to Derek, but he's willing to help. He takes her to his home, where he introduces her to his mom and offers her his room. The next morning, he drives her around the neighborhood in search of a man who supposedly drove the ambulance that day. Their search takes them to a cockfighting arena, where Manny does a video of almost everyone present, while Ava watches from her phone to confirm the identity of the man. Just then, she notices the guy leaving the arena with a lady and follows him without Manny. She eventually follows him into the slums off the street and loses sight of him until he pops out of nowhere and tries to attack her. But we know Ava, and it's gonna take a little more than a sneak attack to take her down. Eventually, she knocks him out and ties him up to interrogate him. However, this bozo mentions he knows nothing but slips out his brother's name to Ava. Ava then calls him with hopes of getting what she's looking for, but when the so-called brother arrives, he gets into a fight with Ava. For once, we see an opponent that proves difficult for Ava, and to save herself, she shoots him dead. In the end, she loses her lead and finds herself back at the station. Garza has had enough of her, so this time, he orders 2 officers to have her locked up in a prison on the island. But as Ava is being driven to this stated prison, she realizes that they've arrived in the middle of the woods, and the officers are actually trying to take her life and bury her without anyone knowing. Ava quickly breaks her right thumb and slips out of the handcuffs, then attacks the officers, taking both their lives instead. Later that night, Garza gets a phone call from one of the officers, only to hear Ava's voice on the other end. Ava then tells him to come see her in his daughter's room and hangs up. Garza, on the other hand, arms himself with a revolver and makes his way to the little girl's room to find Ava aiming her gun at the sleeping little girl. Garza almost freaks out, but Ava tells him to be quiet to avoid waking the little girl up. She asks for his gun and tells him to sit. Ava threatens to shoot the little girl unless Garza has something to say to her about Derek. For fear of his little girl's life, Garza finally comes clean, claiming he was responsible for Derek's disappearance and that he was sorry. He tells her that he owed the doctor Elbar after he had saved his daughter from a particular health problem on the day she was born, just so that Garza wouldn't tell anyone about his wife's pregnancy. But Ava doesn't care about all that pity story and just wants to know where her husband is. So Garza explains to her that Elbar had made a mistake while tending to Derek's broken bone and ended up puncturing an artery, which means he failed to save Derek, and Derek is no more. After that, Elbar asked Garza to help him cover it up by telling the staff and witnesses to say that Derek didn't make it to the hospital, mostly because Elbar didn't want Ava to talk about this to anyone to avoid having the American government terminate his clinic. Can you imagine all that? After hearing all that, Ava asks Garza to kill himself with the gun, but he pleads with her, saying it will wake his family up, and he doesn't want to traumatize his little girl at least. So, Ava offers him another option, which he accepts to atone for his sins. Later, it seems like Garza willingly committed suicide, and Ava leaves the house with half the sense of fulfillment, a trail of bloody footprints on the floor, although she still finds it hard to accept that she has lost Derek just like that. Ava returns to Manny's house later that day, crying over the fact that Derek's gone, and all Nanny can do is console her. Ava then gets some rest and decides that she can't let Elbar go scot-free after what he did to Derek. Early the next morning, she sets out to the hospital. She manages to sneak in after a female attendant who had lied to her that her husband didn't make it to the hospital. She attacks the attendant with a chokehold and grabs her ID before hiding the body in the trunk. Finally, she gets to Elbar, attacks him with a red plastic bag, and then starts to interrogate him about what they did to Derek. While they're at it, Elbar asks her to look at the surveillance screen to see who's behind everything. And surprisingly, she also finds out that Derek is still alive and is being pushed in a wheelchair into the hospital by a group of thugs led by none other than Lugo. She is infuriated that Elbar had lied to Garza and is about to jam her gun into his mouth when Elbar offers her the last chance to save her husband. Practically, if he dies, then Derek will die too. A few minutes later, Ava, who's disguised as a nurse assisting Elbar, meets up with Lugo and his men. Lugo questions the new face, but Elbar covers up, saying that she can be trusted. Later, they're in the theater where Ava attempts to put Lugo to sleep, but it doesn't work, and her intentions are immediately revealed. But she pulls out a gun and manages to subdue all of Lugo's men. She buys Derek time until he springs back to his feet and still has the gun pointed at Lugo. Lugo then explains to her that he has a rare type of cancer called multiple myeloma, so he bragged Elbar into getting a donor who has the stem cells with effective transfusions of bone marrow to help him beat his cancer. And it turns out that Derek was a perfect donor. Not regarding any of the things Lugo said, Ava takes her man and escapes the theater. Although they have a hard time escaping the hospital after being ambushed by one of Lugo's men, Ava still finds a way out by taking the man down. As they try to escape, they get help from Manny and some kids from the island, who make use of objects and local crafts to slow Lugo and his men down. The couple runs into a nearby village with help from Manny, and the villagers are quite cooperative by helping them hide while they take out Lugo's men one by one. Eventually, Ava gets caught by Lugo, and the duo engages in a one-on-one battle where Eva comes out victorious by holding a knife to Lugo's throat. The villagers keep chanting for Lugo to be eliminated, but just then, Big Biz shows up and takes the knife from Ava. He does the honors of eliminating Lugo and asks Ava to leave with her husband. Later, we see Ava and her husband bid Manny farewell and board a speedboat that will take them home. And this is the end. This was a recap of the 2014 movie In the Blood, directed by John Stockwell and starring former fighter Gina Carano. I think we can all agree that Ava is one really cool woman, right? I mean, what do you think would have happened if she decided to give up after hearing that Derek was no more? Well, let us know in the comments below with #CinemaRecap. Until next time.